Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about immunity. Normally, this is toward the end of the semester, but given the circumstances that we're in, I think maybe moving this up to right after red blood cells would have some benefits to you. When I think about immunity, I think about the body's response to disease. How does the body respond? What does it do? How does it handle that situation? And what I think is instructive to think about is the challenge between, or the difference between challenge and defense. Challenge, how many disease causing organisms are out there? How virulent are they? How aggressive are they? How much damage can they do? That's the challenge. And then we think about the defenses. What does the animal have to defend itself against the attack? Is there certain things that are specific? There's certain things that are not specific. What's there? What's available? How does the animal respond? And so who wins? Is it challenge or is it defense? So the more disease-causing agents we have in the environment, the more likely they are to overwhelm the defenses. The stronger those challenges are, the ability to cause that agent, the more likely it is to win. The challenge is going to win. When we think about the defenses, it takes time and energy to defend yourself. We have passive defenses, the things that are very general, very non-specific. And these are usually barriers of one form or another that keep the disease-causing agents, the things that cause problems, outside our body. Then we have the more active components of the immune system, the things that we could say have weapons, not passive barriers like a moat or a wall around a castle. Our actives are the arrows, the catapults, the cannons, the missiles, the mortars, and all that stuff. The active is divided into specific and non-specific. So if we think about the first line of defense, we think of something that is passive. It's not actively attacking things, and we're usually thinking about it and broadly as a barrier in some way, shape, or form. Our first line of defense for us or our animals is the skin. The skin forms a layer that keeps the germs out and all the good stuff sterilized on the other side, clean there. So we've got pHs that help reduce bacterial growth, help reduce fungal growth. It's a barrier that prevents things from getting to the more sensitive tissues. We have a number of mucous membranes near our openings in our body, and these membranes secrete mucus. It's flowing out of our body, usually under the control of cilia that are sweeping the debris and mucus that contains the debris out of our body. So they're kind of pushing things out. As things try to get in, they'd have to swim upstream. They have to fight things. We have a number of secretions that set up environments that are not favorable to bacteria. So the stomach, the hydrochloric acid in us humans, is a good way to keep the bacteria out of our lower tract, our large intestine, small intestine. That hydrochloric acid kills the bacteria coming in. We can use their proteins and things like that, but if we've got a good hydrochloric acid, that becomes a sterilization for the lower tract. It's not perfect, but it helps slow things down. We have a enzyme in the tears called lysozyme It's an antibacterial agent. It's a tear disinfectant. It helps keep our eyes clean and helps prevent infections of the eye. So all these things are passive. You can think of walls or ditches or moats or retractable bridges, all things that are going to impede the movement of the bacteria, the viruses, anything into our body. So we'll call that passive. Unfortunately, in immunity, the word passive is used in a number of different contexts, and we have to make sure we understand in each context what they mean. In this case, we have things that are generally not moving. A wall does not move, a moat does not move. Get into our active defenses, our second and third line of defense. We start with the non-specifics. The non-specifics are generally focused on anything that may come their way. Their eyesight is kind of broad. They can't see everything, but they generally bump into things and say, hey, you don't belong here. I'm going to eat you in the case of our phagocytes up top. Our antimicrobial proteins, we've talked about some of those in the bloodstream, the eyeball, but we have some in the bloodstream, and they help move things around. We also have an inflammation response that helps localize. It's a localized response to an invading pathogen or injury, such as a sliver, in some way, shape, or form. That inflammation helps fight off that disease in some way, disease-causing organism. If we think about the inflammation response, we have a sliver coming into the body, a splinter of some sort. It introduces two different types of bacteria here, close to a capillary. We get an inflammatory response to that injured tissue. That's going to draw our white blood cells, these yellow things here are white blood cells, to the area to start to invade, to start to eat, destroy those bacteria. So we're going to get a localized opening up of capillaries that allows those gaps between the cells that make up the capillary, allows the white blood cells to leave. So histamines, they're going to cause capillaries to dilate and leak. So antihistamine stops that swelling, stops there. We're going to have prostaglandins that are going to promote the blood flow to that area. And with that, we've got more white blood cells, more of an inflammation response, swelling as we get there. Other chemicals released by the injured cells, the injured tissue, are going to attract those white blood cells. Usually, if there's damage, we're going to have infection in some way, shape, or form. We need to have those bacteria there to defend the body against those invaders. And then these, as they die, become the pus. The third line of defense is called the specific immune response. This is a highly specific, a very effective form of immune response. The others are kind of vague, kind of broad, not real targeted, whereas our specific immune response, the body learns about specific invaders and then learns that next time they're there, I'm going to really take care of them. So there's a learning process, and then there's a memory, and then there's an amplification and attack. So there's some time and energy to develop and maintain these systems. But once they're in place, they're highly effective. So when we're thinking about the specific immune system, we need some vocabulary. So there's two things we have to think about. One is the antigen. The antigen is something on the invader that will be recognized by the immune system and therefore activates the immune system. So an antigen activates, and this can be many, many things depending on what that invader is. It might be a skin surface protein, it might be a tail, it might be some sort of protein on the inside, it might be the DNA. Lots of different things can become antigens or recognized as an invader. The more antigens we can have to a particular invader, the more ways to recognize that so it can't disguise itself, it can't hide itself, the more likely it is to be attacked, the more likely it is to be destroyed. And one of the things we do with antigens is we attack them with antibodies. So we're looking at very, very large molecules, and each of these is produced to attack a specific antigen. And how does that work? We'll get to that in a minute. So why is a specific response needed? The first two lines of defense, the passive and the active nonspecific, are innate nonspecific responses. They lack specificity. They don't know how to attack certain types of viruses and bacteria. And some of these over the years have adapted to hide from those first two lines of defense. They don't have memory. They can't amplify their response and say, hey, this was here before, it caused a lot of trouble, let's ramp things up, let's flatten the curve, as it were, the phrase you're hearing. So that second response toward a specific antigen will be much quicker and more amplified than the first response. So that memory saying, hey, you got me once, you're not going to get me twice. So when we're thinking about a specific immune response, we're thinking about the lymphocytes, specifically the B's and T's. Now, there are a lot of different types of B's and T's. We're not going to worry so much about the different types. We're going to broadly put the B's in one category and the T's in the other, although there's more overlap than I'm suggesting here. So the lymphocytes, we have antigen recognition, and with that antibody production. To once you've learned what they are, we need specific antibodies. We have a chemotoxic or cytotoxic attack of infected cells. So cells that are infected, the specific immune response recognizes them, attacks those cells and destroys them. That's one of the big things with the coronavirus. You've got so many cells that are being attacked in the lungs that you start to get a lot of lung damage. You've got immunological memory, so they're kept. Once you learn how to fight off this in particular invader, recognize this particular invader, it's kept in memory. And there's a regulation of specific the immune response. These lymphocytes can have an overall effect of managing the immune response. So there's lots of different types. We're not going to worry too much about them. We're going to focus on the overall B and T's.